The moment the Nazis arrived at the farm, something felt wrong. Not in a way that could be pinpointed. Not a trap laid by partisans or the distant echo of gunfire. But a deeper, more insidious sense that gnawed at the edges of their trained minds. My grandfather described it as a silence that wasn't empty. It was thick, almost physical, pressing against their ears and their thoughts. Soldiers who had faced battle after battle, who had stormed towns and executed orders without question, suddenly hesitated. They looked at one another with unease. But none spoke, because no words could explain what they were feeling. It was as if the air itself was warning them, whispering that they were not welcome, and that staying would cost them more than their lives. It would cost their sanity. The farm itself appeared ordinary at first glance. A weathered farmhouse. Barns sagging under years of neglect, fields that had once been plowed and now lay wild with weeds. But there was something about the angles of the roof, the way the shadows fell, the way the wind seemed to carry a low moan across the empty fields that unsettled even the most hardened among them. Soldiers swore they saw movements in the corners of their eyes, shapes vanishing when confronted directly. Doors creaked open on their own. Objects seemed slightly displaced, as if the farm were alive and mocking their intrusion. Every step they took felt heavier, every breath more labored, as if the place itself resisted them. They had come with weapons, with orders, with confidence born from cruelty. Yet all of that fell away the moment they entered the boundary of the farm. My grandfather said he could see it in their faces. The twitching hands, the darting eyes, the half-whispered curses. Some laughed nervously. A laugh that rang hollow even to themselves. While others simply froze, staring at walls or empty corners as if expecting something terrible to emerge. It was no ordinary fear. It was a premonition, a gut-level warning that left no room for reason. By the second hour, the decision became inevitable. No attack. No strategy. No reassurance from commanding officers could counteract the weight of the unease that had settled over them. They abandoned the farm almost in a panic, retreating down the dirt road without so much as a backward glance. Guns were slung over shoulders. Boots kicked up dust. And the wind seemed to carry away their bravado, leaving behind only a lingering question. What had scared them so completely? The farm itself stood silent and untouched, waiting, as if it had known all along that the men would never return. That is the real terror, my grandfather said. The kind that doesn't leave marks on skin or evidence in reports. It doesn't demand bullets or blood. It creeps into the mind, twisting confidence into doubt, discipline into hesitation. And the Nazis, trained killers though they were, recognized instinctively that some things cannot be fought. That some threats are more psychological than physical. The farm's power lay not in fire or steel, but in the weight of its presence. The uncanny atmosphere that made even the cruelest soldiers feel utterly vulnerable. And that, he whispered, is why they fled without looking back. Even after the Nazis fled, the farm didn't lose its power. Locals still whispered about it long after the war. About the shadows that moved without source. About the strange symbols carved into doors and beams. About the low, almost imperceptible hum that seemed to rise from the soil itself. My grandfather always said that the farm carried a presence. Something that didn't belong to any army, any ideology, any mortal hand. It was a place where fear lingered long after footsteps had vanished. A place that demanded respect. Or demanded avoidance. For those who had dared enter. The memory of it stayed like a weight on their chest. A warning that some dangers cannot be fought with bullets or commands. The Nazis may have been powerful, ruthless, and trained to enforce obedience through fear and violence. But the farm offered a different kind of threat. It was not visible in the way a soldier is visible to a sniper. It was invisible yet undeniable, creeping into the mind like a shadow, amplifying every doubt and guilt they carried. My grandfather said that when men encounter places steeped in history, places where tragedy and ritual have combined over decades or centuries, the ordinary rules of logic can unravel. The farm seemed to exist outside of time. And in that suspension, ordinary soldiers became vulnerable, ordinary fear became paralyzing. Stories told by villagers described the farm's past as well. Whispered accounts of dark rituals performed long before the Nazis arrived. Of lives lost under mysterious circumstances. Of livestock found dead in patterns too precise to be accidents. Whether these stories were fully true, exaggerated, or the result of generations of fear, they added a layer of psychological weight to the place. Soldiers, even those hardened by war, could feel it. Superstition and instinct combined in a way that logic could not pierce. The atmosphere itself seemed to judge them, to sense their intentions, to make them aware that some acts, some trespasses, would not be tolerated. Even as the men fled, the impression of the farm lingered. My grandfather said he had seen it in their faces. A mixture of relief, disbelief, and something closer to awe. They did not speak of it openly. And when questioned later, their reports described nothing unusual. But those who had been there knew. They carried with them the memory of a place where power and fear intertwined, where the ordinary laws of life and death seemed suspended, and where the mind could be as trapped as the body. It was a place that left no physical mark, yet left an indelible scar on their consciousness. A warning that not all danger is seen, and not all threats are combated with weapons. The farm became a symbol, my grandfather explained, of the limits of force. It was proof that even the strongest, most brutal people could be rendered powerless by a combination of history, atmosphere, and the uncanny. It was a place where morality, instinct, and the unexplained intersected, creating an invisible trap that preyed on the mind. That is why the Nazis did not linger. That is why they did not look back. And that, my grandfather said quietly, is why some places in history remain untouchable, remembered not for battles fought, but for fear that could not be resisted, and for lessons that survive long after the men who fled have gone.